here, and then we do have an introduction section in the PowerPoint, and we are recording this meeting. Ashley, can you give me a sound check because I'm not hearing anything?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, all right, cool. All right, so I'm Miguel Guillen. I am the Grants to Organizations Program Manager, and I'll be facilitating the webinar today. I'm going to jump right into our PowerPoint. And let me see. This is always a trip, right? Okay, so let me see. Share, do, share, and slideshow. Can you all see that? Cool. I see a thumbs up, so I'm going to go right into it. So we're going to talk about the art project grant today, and for fiscal year 27, calendar year 26, if that's not confusing. So, so we're going to cover a ton of info. Wow, we still got folks coming in today. So have your notes ready, have your notes taking ready. The meeting is being recorded though, and we'll post it up onto um, our website as soon as it's ready, which we just pretty quickly. So we're going to cover a ton of info. Mute your background if you can, in case there's background noise that might interfere with the webinar access. You'll see the CC down here if you want to turn on captions. You'll see that on your Zoom page, and so just click on that and captions turn on. Questions, you can put questions into the chat as we go along. Ashley will try to keep track of those, but then also we'll pause every now and then to see if there's any specific questions as pertaining to the topic that we're talking about at the moment. And then at the end, we'll try to leave as much time as we can to get to questions. Project support usually has a lot of questions, so we'll do our best. So this is our team. I'm Miguel, Ashley, and Lisa. Lisa's not here in the meeting today, but she's our program specialist. For grants and project support, you'll primarily be dealing with Ashley as your front person, and then myself as a sort of a support to Ashley. Ashley, did you want to give us a little intro?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Marshall. I'm the admin assistant for grants to organizations. I've been with ArtsWA for about 3 years, going on 4. And yeah, it's nice to meet everyone.
Well, thanks, Ashley. And again, I'm Miguel Guillen. I'm the Grants to Organizations Program Manager. I've been with the agency 10 years. And yeah, I'm a practicing visual artist. I live in Olympia. I'm in San Francisco right at the moment visiting my partner. All right, so that's our team. And today's agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about grants to organizations, some grant overview, the grant purpose, eligibility, timeline, a couple of frequently asked questions that we just hear a lot. There's really only two, but we'll cover those. And then you can ask, of course, questions as you go along. We're going to talk about the evaluation criteria. We are using priority funding, and we'll talk about that what that is when we get to that slide. Some tips for a strong application. We just have a couple of things in there as well. A little bit about work samples and about your budget. The most important part really is to walk through the application so that you can see what is in there and how to answer those questions and what we mean by those questions and that kind of stuff. So we'll spend a good amount of time on the application and then questions. Okay, so let's see here. So a little grounding, grants to organizations, and just a heads up that grants to organizations is actually going to change its name next year. we're going to be called creative development, and we're going to move along with grants. We're going to couple grants with a lot of some professional development courses that we've developed, workshops. So the name of the program is going to change next year. And thanks to Ashley for that wonderful name. Creative development was actually her idea and the concept, and then we built on that. And so the program will look a little different. Grants are going to be the same. We're just going to do additional stuff. We're going to have different kinds of grants too. So looking forward to that. So what do? We do grants, project support, general operating support, art service organization support, and then we do a lot of special grant programs. If money comes our way, we usually are the program that launches any kind of additional programming for grants. Project support, of course, is for projects. General operating support and art service organization support. Those are both general operating support grants. Those are 2-year grants. This is an off year for operating support, so we're not doing operating support this year. But we do project support every year. So when you do get an operating support grant, as some of you may have, it's a 2-year grant. And then special grants are according to whatever the funder wants us to do with those funds. Grants to organizations, our mission basically revolves around cultural equity, expanding the creative economy, and supporting arts participation. These are generally the reasons that the legislature created the Arts Commission, and that's basically our mission as a program. The Art Project Grant that we have just opened up on Monday. It supports art projects happening between July 1st and June 30th. So July 1st, 2026 and June 30th, 2027. Organizations do not need to have an arts-based mission to apply, but the project must have arts, heritage, or culture as a primary component. So we're allowed to fund 2 types of organizations, 501c3, arts, heritage, and culture. And then we're also allowed to fund 501c3s that have a social impact mission. A lot of social service organizations do arts projects. And as an example, a lot of social service organizations do arts projects, and we like to be able to fund that. So we spread the arts around as much as possible. The reason that there's a differentiation there is because general operating, we're funded by the NEA. They like very careful tracking of their money. When we do general operating support for arts, heritage, and cultural organization, that aligns with the NEA's mission. Outside of that, a project support grant is a contained budget, so we're able to track the NEA money that way. And then one thing we like to emphasize is art project versus art program. We run into this pretty much every year. So an art project has a start and end date and is usually a little bit outside of what somebody does, or it could be, well, that's the primary thing. It has a start and an end date. And a program is more something that the organization has on their regular menu of offerings that they do. They do it all the time. A project funds cannot be used to fund a program. The caveat to that is if the program, the example I use, if a social impact organization has a music program that they run regularly, they're not an arts organization, but they do have that music program. We can't fund that music program with project support money. But if that program is producing a concert that's outside of what they normally do, we can fund the concert. So if that program is doing something different and it has a start date and an end date and is a contained budget for the concert, then we can fund that. All right. Eligibility, we fund 501c3 nonprofits, fiscally sponsored groups, local arts agencies or LLAs are a specific type of organization commonly found in more rural areas or areas with smaller governments. A local arts agency is normally formed by a government when they can't really afford to have like an arts commission or their city budget is small, they will designate a nonprofit organization, usually a non-discipline specific, to do the arts and cultural work for the government, the local governments, and that's what a local arts agency is. Tribal governments. And when it comes to fiscally sponsored, I've had a lot of questions about fiscal sponsorship. I tried to add in some slides to that, but it just made the presentation so long. So I would prefer that anybody that has questions about fiscal sponsorship, that they reach out to me and we have a little one-on-one, because it can be complicated and it's a little bit different for everybody. So additional to the eligibility, the arts project has to have arts as a primary component, and we mean arts, heritage, or culture as a primary component. It has to be open to the public. Happen between July 1st, 2026 and June 30th, 2027. Take place in Washington. The organization that applies has to be in operation for a year. That's a NEA stipulation. We can't fund an organization that's been in operation for less than a year and have produced at least one project or program. It doesn't have to be an arts, heritage, or culture program, but it does have to, what you're trying to do there is show your capacity to do the program that you're doing. So if you're signing up for a project and you've not done an arts, culture, or heritage project in the past, provide some example of something that is like that sort of structurally so that we can get a sense of your capacity to do the project. Not eligible. Applied for the 2026-27 operating support. So that's because this is year two of that grant. And so you're already funded essentially. We have such limited funding that we have to be really particular about these things. So if you're in year two of an operating support grant, while you're not actually submitting an application, you're still getting the second part of your grant this year. So that makes you ineligible for project support. Or I'm sorry, yeah, for project support this time around. We don't fund individuals, for-profit organizations, excuse me, government agencies, universities, colleges, academic departments, and K through 12 schools. We don't fund, and there's specific expenses that we don't fund, and you'll find those on our website. It's just a list of different types of activities, religious activities, and such that we don't fund. But the full list is available on our website for you to take a peek at or download. And so the application opened on Monday, March 9th. It closes on the 16th. This is an automated system. It closes at 5 p.m. A lot of people think it's going to close at 12, which is not an unusual thought, but ours happens to close at 5 p.m. And we'll have another webinar like this one on March 25th. And it's also going to be from 12 to 1. We hold weekly office hours. I believe Ashley has them set up for Thursdays. But they start March 17th through April 14th. We open up. We're here to answer your questions from 12 to 1. You can register for that, so we have some sense of who's coming in. But you can also pop in if you happen to at the last minute get the link. We don't mind that at all. We're there to answer your questions, go over your application a little bit, not like the full application, but if you have questions on a particular part or something like that, we can help you. And we're looking at the last week of May 2026 to have notifications out. That's really like a generous for us. It's a lot of time in there. More than likely, you'll hear from us before then. But we do like to give ourselves a little bit of extra time because sometimes things go a little squirrely on us for this or that reason, and we like to make sure that that we're able to get everything in order before we notify folks.
If I could jump in real quick, Miguel, with a question.
Hmm.
Um, it says, as a border county of Oregon and Washington, some programs are located in Oregon but provide programs in Washington. Are they eligible to apply?
You're on the border for Oregon and Washington. You do some programming in Washington. We can only fund the programming in Washington, and it has to be very distinct. This is all taxpayer money, and Washington taxpayer money has to be spent in Washington. So we'd have to discuss your project and how that distinction is going to be made for us so that we're clear. It doesn't mean you're ineligible, but there's particulars there in there that we want to make sure you understand. And that's basically that the funds that you get from us need to be spent in Washington is the primary thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
a few more
Yep.
questions if we
Oh,
have a second.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Another question is, I was awarded a ArtsWA General Operating Grant for 2026, but not 2027. Are we eligible?
Oh, yeah. We did do some 1 year. That's right. We had a little bit of extra money and we did some 1 years. Yes, yes, you are. If you are not getting the second part of an operating support grant that was awarded to you last year for this year, then you are eligible. And I think there was just a handful of those folks that we did 1 years for.
Um, Another question. Can the project have had activity prior to the start date, but be continuing through the funding dates?
Uh, no, not really. Well, I'd have to look at the particulars of your project. The thing about this is once the federal money comes into the state, it becomes state money, and the state contract doesn't allow us to pay for anything that has already happened. So we'd have to look at how that money would be used, and um, yeah, I'd have to look at it really to know understand what's going on.
Can I clarify for a second on that?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be asking for funding for past activity, but that the project would have individual outcomes in different locations. So what I'm saying is we may have done some things beforehand, but we would use the money for future executions.
So the project is called like I don't know. So the project has
Multiple outputs, right?
right.
In
So
different locations, yeah.
the first part of the project, why don't we talk? Why don't you send me an email about that? Because I'd have to take a
Sure.
look. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a really sticky area for the state and a place that the auditors really focus on. So we'd have to look at that carefully. Okay.
One more.
Yeah.
The active for 1 year requirement, is that from the application date or the proposed project date? We filed our articles in August of 2025, but our project is not until October 2026.
You have to be in operation to apply for a year. Um, so it's after a year that you are in operation that you can apply. So you've been in operation since August of 2025, and you haven't quite been in operation for a year yet. Even if your project happens ahead of time, which is common for project support, we normally fund projects ahead of time. The standard for the NEA is that the organization has had to have been in operation for a year at time of application.
Um, okay, one more. As a local education foundation, can we apply on behalf of an arts program that takes place at a public school?
Oh, so the one thing about the additional with the NEA grants is the project has to be open to the public, and schools are not normally open to the public. Basically, what it means is that if you did do it at a school, then any kid anywhere should be able to walk into that school and attend that project if they're aware of it, or attend what event, if they're aware of it. So there can't be a barrier for folks to to participate in the project. Any more? Okay, and you guys, if you want to chime in on my responses, that's fine too. But let's just keep moving. But feel free to unmute and add to the question or some additional information. Okay, so the let's see where were we? Not eligible. And all right, so we have changed some things this year. As you all know, the federal government has kind of been pared down quite a bit. And we're having a lot of trouble with UEI numbers, and this has really caused us some problems throughout the year because normally we would accept applications without a UEI number, and then folks who run into difficulties, and some have spent almost the entire time of their project support timeline trying to get their UEI number, and so we weren't able to give them funds and things like that. It's just gotten really crazy at the federal government. Some folks sail right through, and some folks do not. That was common, but now it's gotten really bad. So, what we're doing this year, with the approval of our executive director, is we're requiring folks to have their UEI before they apply. So if you haven't gotten your UEI, you need to get that on that pretty quickly. Like I said, it can be really quick, but it can take time. And that's what we're trying to avoid because our funds need to be spent within a certain period, and it just really complicates things if we don't have that UEI. So we're requiring the UEI now to apply, which is very different for us. We normally didn't do that. So everybody has to have a UEI. That's your fiscal sponsor if you're fiscally sponsored, and any 501(c)(3)s that apply. If you receive a grant, we will request the following, but this is only if we receive a grant. So to offset that requirement, we are lessening the requirement on other numbers. So now, in order to make sure that we facilitate as many applications as we can and make it as easy as we can for folks, we're not requiring these other numbers at the time of application anymore. We're only going to require the UBI, the statewide vendor number, and the EIN at the time that folks actually get a grant. So that's going to be different. And then fiscally sponsored groups, we, will fiscally sponsored groups will use their fiscal sponsored numbers listed on above on this slide. Fiscally sponsored groups, make sure you have the following for both your group and your fiscal sponsor, and that's a UBI. We're requiring that everybody have a UBI should you get a grant. So a UBI is basically a business license number. So we're requiring that you be registered with the state now. Um, Again, you can reach out to us if you have any questions about any of that. It's a little different for us. And what's also a little bit different is this grant confirmation form. So if you get a grant, because we didn't ask you for those numbers in the application, if you get a grant, you're going to get this form. It's a new form, and some folks like didn't see it or didn't understand it. We need to make sure we get this back to you so that we can start your contract if you get a grant. So if you get a grant award letter, you'll please know that there's going to be an additional form, which is the one in front of you, that is required so that we can move forward with your contract. And we do have an accessibility person on staff. Our accessibility coordinator is Alexis Sarah. She'll answer general questions about accessibility, but she's not really up to helping folks with this specific grant. So she can't answer a question specific to the grant and like, should I do this or should I do that? But if you have questions about accessibility, she's always there to talk to you about accessibility within your organization or within a grant application. In other words, of how, you might articulate things or that kind of thing. So, but that's in general. And some FAQs, organizations apply for multiple ArtsWA grants. So we have many programs here at ArtsWA that you can apply to, depending on your qualifications, to apply to those programs. You can apply to two different departments, two different like arts and education and grants to organizations, but you can't apply to two programs within a program. So you can't apply for two grant programs in arts and education, or you can't apply for two programs in grants to organizations. So if we happen to have two grants open, you can only apply for one. What are the chances of receiving a grant? We've averaged that out to be about really low, like 20%. It's 25%. We're just not really well funded, and the competition is really high. And we just get so many applications. So it is low.
Uh, One more question for you, Miguel. Um, if our fiscal sponsor is not in Washington, does that preclude from being eligible? We are sponsored by Fractured Atlas.
We have a lot of fractured atlas folks. No, that doesn't preclude you. They just have to have, it's kind of, the UBI is the part that I know fractured atlas has had some issues with because we do require a UBI, which is state specific. So there is that, and I would make sure that I talk to, and I'm not really sure where we ended up with fractured atlas on UBIs. It's been a few years now, so they're used to it, but I'm not sure what the process is for them. So I would make sure to talk to fractured atlas about the UBI situation. All right. And so priority funding, what we've done is you've heard us mention quite often how underfunded we are, and we are severely underfunded. Basically, well, actually, we run on our grant programs is $500,000 is what we get from the NEA for grants to Washington State. So we do the entire state with that funding. But we also have other metrics we need to meet in terms of equity and just a lot of other stuff. So in order to meet all those different points, we've done priority funding. So applications that come in go through this priority sieve to make sure that we are reaching the points that are required of us by both the state and the agency. So we prioritize organizations with operating budgets of 0 to 50,000, to small organizations, and then slightly larger, 50 to 100,000 is second. Operation for 1 to 5 years. Again, we're prioritizing small organizations and businesses located in areas of the state that are commonly listed as distressed counties by the Department of Employment and organizations serving constituencies consisting of 25% or more of an underserved group. Priority scoring applications, we review them for eligibility. Uh, we basically put them through this sieve of priorities, and then we score them according to where you land on priorities. And then we make recommendation for funding to the executive director or the board of commissioners, depending on the size of the grant. Most of these are under $5,000, which is the cutoff. So most of these will be approved by, well, all of these will be approved by our executive director. And so some of the things we like to focus on is work samples are important for us because we're doing this without panels right now. Panels were costing us about $15,000 a year, which is a lot of grant money, right? It goes to panelists instead. So we kind of pared this down a bit. But one of the things that we use, and because it's staff that are reviewing applications and putting you through this, when we get to a point where we're not really understanding, say you're in an area where that doesn't fall directly in the priority area, and we're having to make decisions. One thing that really helps us is your work samples. So, what I mean by that is your application should read as sort of a a couple of paragraphs out of one story, right? It should be all connected, and work samples should reflect what you reflected up above in your budget, in your other statements, and any other information you gave us about your application. Because we're down to us reviewing this as staff, we want to make sure that all of this aligns really well. So your work samples should be really reflective of the project that you're presenting in some way so that we can easily identify the connection between what you've done and what you're saying you're going to do. Again, we're quickly trying to assess capacity, your ability to do these things. So the work sample works in that way. And then budget. Uh, when you're describing your project in your application, and we'll go over the application in a minute, the budget should correspond to that really well. Sometimes narratives start to get a little bit more expansive or they're aspirational for the project. We want to make sure that the budget is actually reflecting what it is that you say you're going to do. So getting too aspirational sometimes leads us to believe that you're not understanding potentially what something's cost or if this is actually a feasible application. So the budget is kind of like your condensed narrative of everything you're going to say. It should be pretty visible in your budget that what you say you're going to do in your project is accounted for in the numbers. Okay, so now we're going to switch over to the application. And let's see here. And it's right here. So this is the application for this year. Kind of looks very much like it does every year. So the first thing is that I'd like to point out is the applicant legal name. This is your organization's legal name. And I emphasize that because fiscally sponsored groups, make sure you put your organization, your group's name in there, not your fiscal sponsors. And that's a common mistake there. So, and it's not the name of the applicant. So a lot of times we find people's names in there because they're filling out the application. It's the name of the group that's going to use the money, I guess is the best way to kind of articulate that. So the application has the eligible types of organizations. Each of these will open up a different section of the application. So it's kind of on that skip logic sort of mode. When you click on this, depending on the type of organization you are, it's going to open up slightly different requirements. Most of you guys are going to be nonprofit 501c3s. Going to immediately ask for your letter of determination, give you some other information. If you have a DBA, your organization's mission statement. But I do want to pop right back up here to fiscally sponsored groups. So a lot of times folks are wondering where the fiscal sponsor information goes. So if you're fiscally sponsored, a whole section is going to open up with asking for all your fiscal sponsors information. So without that, aside from that, everything else in the application is about you, the organization that's going to use the funds. So let's go back to 501c3 because that's the most common. Do have a little information about faith-based organizations. We do like your mission statement. Mission statements are really important. The NEA really presses us to gather mission statements. Mission statements also work in audits. They're really an important instrument in our funding procedures. So please do put in your mission statement and don't invent a mission statement or alter your mission statement for the grant. You should never do that anyway, but it really kind of messes things up because the first thing we do is check to see, like on your website, if it corresponds, and if it doesn't, things start to get a little squirrely for us. Your organization's website, if you have one. If you don't, any social media where you might be present is good for us. If you just don't have anything, please reach out to us and we'll figure out a way to work that. your mission statement page. So this is how we link what you say with how you're, visible out there in the world. And this is where we ask you how long you've been in operation for our priority funding process. We use your phone number, address, mailing address, county is really important. So, what I want to emphasize here is that we want the county where you are physically based, not necessarily, not the counties where your project may be taking place. This is where you're based. This is, of course, for data that we need to gather on, where our applications are coming from. Our commissioners love this information so they know how many organizations in their jurisdiction were applied in that kind of information. So this is where you're actually physically based, not where your project necessarily is going to take place. And the legislative district, this is a pretty easy tool to use here. You just go in and you type in your address and it finds your district for you. This is all we need is your legislative district, not your congressional district. Artistic discipline. So this one is what we're trying to find out here is the artistic discipline that's going to be sort of a primary of your project. It's hard to do that, I know, with projects sometimes, especially if it's a parade or it's a festival. It's like, but as good as you can, give us like your primary, if there are any disciplines that will be experienced by folks when they attend your event. ADA compliance, that's required, so we want to make sure that you've looked at this and are complying with ADA requirements. We want our projects to be as accessible as possible. Conflict of interest, and we're just asking if you know anybody or if anybody on your team knows anybody or has any affiliations with ArtsWA. Doesn't affect anything. This is for public record. We need to know and have made public if we awarded a grant to an organization that somebody on staff or something had an affiliation with us. This is just us declaring we know that. If there's a problem with who we see in there for some reason, we'll reach out to you. But it's really not a barrier or anything, or it doesn't really count. We don't measure that as we're looking at applications. This is just for public disclosure. Contact information uh, for your organization. And really all we're asking for here is your email, and that's so that we can get that form that I mentioned earlier to let you know that you got to, if you got a grant that we need additional information. This contact information is really important because that's where we're going to send that. And we don't want Ashley chasing people all over Washington State like she does sometimes. Okay, so organization identifiers, the UEIs. Sam. Yeah. So this is your UEI number, and it's required now to apply. So operating budget, we'd like to put you into a category. Again, this is for our general information as we're going through CIVs to know the size of your organization. So it's more of a general category of your budget size. And then this is your actual budget. So we want you to upload your last fiscal year, your last operating year's budget that was closed and approved by your board. So your final numbers, and then from that we ask you to extract these three numbers. And the reason we do that is because budget forms can look like a million different things, and sometimes it's really hard for us to understand, where to find these specific numbers that we are required to collect. We're asking you to do it for us. So we just ask you to put that in there. Your budget form uploaded, and then if you could from that extract these three numbers, and we're ready to go. So here is your project information, project title. Project snapshot is just a sentence or two about the project. It's something that we use for sharing, like if we're going to share an overall assessment of the projects that we funded or that applied with our commissioners. It's nice to be able to just pull this quick snapshot from your application rather than try to sort of boil one down from the full description, which is right here. And here we want everything. We want to know what the project is doing, where it's happening, who's involved, and as concise as you can, give us that information. This is your big picture view of your project. How much you're asking? 1,000 to 3,000. Most folks ask for 3,000. I highly always recommend, I recommend highly always that you always apply for the full amount on any grant, especially with an organization like ours that has these financial constraints. It helps us understand, it really helps us if we're having to reduce grant amounts. It's nice to have um, a higher number to reduce from, I guess is what I'm saying. If you're at $1,000 and we can only fund it 50%, it just gets kind of crazy. So starting at a higher number is easier for us to do those percentages. And we have this that I covered earlier about applying for different programs within different departments. So we have that um, verification there. We want to know if you have any public art installations. This is primarily murals. We want to know if you are doing a mural that you have the proper documentation, etc. And this is your primary county. Now here we're asking where your project will take place. So this is different. So we want to know, and it could be in most cases is just the county where the organization is. That's, pretty common. But then we also ask where else your project might be taking place. So when we're going through the priorities funding and we get to the very end and we're looking at, and we still have money left over and we're looking at how we're going to distribute that money, the first place we go to is to see if your project is taking place in any of the distressed counties or other areas that we've identified in the priorities. So that does count. I would, be careful there to make sure that it's actually happening there and that kind of thing. But if you're doing, I'll pick on King County. If you're in King County, and your project's also taking place in Grace Harbor or something like that, that's going to count in your favor in terms of priority funding. So if that's happening, we do want to know that. And some details. Here we just ask for some details of what day this is taking place, where it's taking place. Is there a fee? Is it free? So we're just asking for that breakdown here of your project. So we have some sort of articulation, identification of your different facets. Remember that this should match your project description above. So if your broad description isn't matching your dates and stuff, or it's looking kind of wonky, and you do get a grant, we probably will reach out to you. Project budget, and is here, and here's this what we can and cannot fund. It's linked here, and it's on our website. We just want you to understand that there's certain activities that, as a state agency, we're not allowed to support. And here's your project budget. So the columns are here. We like a little bit of a breakdown, and I think we give you an example, or we used to. Maybe it's not in there right now. Yeah, right here. This kind of an example is really helpful to us if you're willing to do that. Where you give us the number of hours. It helps us understand when you're hiring a contractor or something like that, and there's a breakdown, especially if it's a contractor for a very special activity that's maybe not art specific. It gives us a little bit of I don't know, a little bit of deeper understanding, so that we don't make assumptions or, or even bad assumptions about your budgets. The breakdown is really important to us. If you can do that, it's helpful. Not everybody does, and that's, it's not a requirement, but it is helpful. The total amount, the expense, and then the total amount that ArtsWA we paid from our teeny tiny little grants. So, how much of our grant is going to pay for staff and administration or any of these different topics. And make sure to scroll some folks don't notice that there's a scroll thing here and there's more available. There's also some blank spots here that you can add stuff in. And don't use any kind of anything, just numbers is all we want in there because it breaks the formula and you won't get a total down here. Then we ask you to pull from that the total expenses for the project. And then your income, are you getting any other kind of support for your project? It's not, a requirement. There's no match or anything like that. It's just good for us to know if there's any other forms of support that are coming into your project. And then the total income for your project. And it's okay to make money on a project. A project doesn't have to break even, or it doesn't have to not make any money. You can make money. What you don't want, of course, is to be in the deficit. And in kind. So if you receive anything free or anything like that, this is where you record it. What we prefer and almost require is that you do track that on your budget, your operating budget. So when you submit your operating budget further up in the application, if you're tracking in kind, obviously in your budget, then it makes more sense for us to see it here. But in general, anything that's being donated to your organization, you can list. It's nice and it's a good habit to list your in-kind and keep track it in your budget. What it says to us and to a lot of funding organizations is that you fully understand what it costs you to do your project, to do the work that you're going to do. I've sat in many, many panels. I've been an arts administrator in Washington for 20 years, hundreds of panels, and panelists are really funky about that stuff. So if you are not, you'll be surprised how many times I have heard, they actually don't know what they're doing because they're not listing their in kind and they said they got these free things and stuff like that. So be careful on that and make sure that you're like fully tracking everything in your budget. And then a total. And then here we just ask again for other types of funding support because we don't have matching grants. We don't ask you for a match or anything like that. This is important for an auditor to see that, you did have some other concepts of where you were going to get funded. It just kind of expands the conversation around your application. Artistic merit is something that's put in here by the NEA. Artistic merit's important to the NEA. It used to be called artistic excellence, but now it's called artistic merit because it's more equitable that way. And if any of these are sort of responsive to the goal of your project, just check it off and let us know. And fully accessible. And you're going to say yes. And here we ask about the 25% audiences. So 25% can be measured a lot of different ways, and a lot of applicants have schooled us on different ways that they do it. But we're looking for a high degree of underserved populations having their arts participation, availability met through your project. Is that happening? It's yeah, it's up to you how you handle this, but we are looking at, if some folks want to check off every single box, we know that's probably not true, so just know that ahead of time. And work samples, again, I talked a little bit about work samples. We ask you to upload some samples. We're looking for activities that involve people. The worst kind of work sample that we get are posters for events that don't have any location, dates, or times. It's just, this thing. That's almost like ignorable by us because it doesn't really provide us any information. So matching up your activity with your work samples to show that activity, to sort of balance that activity, to let us know that this is the kind of thing you do, and showing us people like photos of people engaging is really important to us. So those kinds of work samples, those that show engagement, people interacting with your organization or your project in the past, or people attending things that are similar to what you're asking for support for, are important to us. So that's kind of what we're looking at for work samples, and same with videos. So, and then that is that. I'm going to go back to PowerPoint and let me know if you have any questions the um, on the application. Um, Otherwise, I'm going to go just to next steps, gather your work samples, pull together your budget, gather your organization's information, kind of basic stuff here. Draft your application in Word if possible. Reach out if you need us for any help, and then remember to cut off the deadline date is April 16th, 5 p.m., not midnight, 5 p.m. All right. So, and that's it. And this is our team. You pretty much won't be working too much with Lisa, but Ashley is like your primary person, and then I back Ashley up during grant application processes or season. So I'm going to stop sharing. We barely got a few minutes to for questions, but if you have any, I'm happy to answer them, or if there's any in chat.
Yes, there are quite a few, and forgive me while I scroll to try to remember where to start. Okay, here we go. Question number one is it's a follow-up question to the active for 1 year question previously. They have been a group and active for over a year, but only filed in August. What counts as active?
Meaning filed for 501(c)(3), or what does that mean, filed?
I believe if Melinda is still
Melinda, are you still
in,
there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we filed with our articles of incorporation with Washington State in August, but we've been around for a little while and we are a 501(c)(3) now too. But I'm not sure what what's the start or what do you
What's the
count
date?
as active?
Yeah, when did you get your 501(c)(3)?
In December of this year.
Oh, December of 2025.
Oh yeah,
So
2025. Yeah, that's correct.
um
But we
and
obviously had put that in a little while ago because it
yeah,
takes some time.
right. So I'm just wondering what's going to show up in the application. So we have your letter of determination, which is going to be dated December 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And your articles of incorporation are also going to be sometime in 2025, but not quite a year from now, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. See, we go through audits.
Okay. Okay.
It's kind of hard, but I'm willing to have this chat a little bit further. But I don't know how I'm going to get around that is a thing.
Okay.
And
Okay.
with this federal government, audits are like, oof, kind of crazy. So yeah,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
yeah.
Helpful.
Okay. Next question. Um, does this mean we will be scored low if we don't meet all the priority areas? I
Well,
guess is there any chance that organizations that do not meet all 6 priority areas receive funding?
yes. So we just go through, we pull the data and we put it through this, I call it a sieve. I don't know if that's even the right word, but we put it through the priorities, right? And then we see how much money we have left, and then we go on to the folks that don't meet the priority. So once we have sure we've met the priority applications that are in our pool, we just move on and look for other things connected to the goals of the organization. For instance, audiences served. We looked at, what I mentioned earlier was, does the organization produce events outside of their area that might be, a distressed area? We look at those things. Are we looking at what we're looking at? So in the end, what we were trying to do is get a full, as well as we can, a full balance of discipline served and that kind of thing after we meet the priority funding. We have such few money that it's usually about, I don't know, 65%, and then the remainder for the 35% we kind of start to distribute to folks that don't meet the priorities but have other connecting um, you know qualifications for an award.
Okay, next question. I see that you don't fund grants to individuals, but if we are trying to get guest speakers to do a public lecture, can it fund honoraria?
Of course. Yeah, yeah. So in the application, there's contracted folks. So if you're contracting with a writer to come in and speak to your group, then that would be a contracted portion of your application.
And we have another question here. What category would public murals fall into?
Public murals, we're kind of in a weird place with public murals. We're not actually allowed to fund capital improvements or capital things. So, and a public mural is on a building, as you know. We can fund the supporting activities as long as it's not food and drink. We can fund supplies, we can fund activities, musicians to play at an event for the public to, hype the mural or have an activity. We just, once the paint starts to go onto the wall, that's where we're limited. The way that we can fund them is if the mural is portable. So if it's a substrate that's put onto a building but can be removed and moved around, then we can fund that because while it's mural-esque, it's not actually a mural in the sense that it's not directly on a building.
Next question. We will be applying for grant funds to paint it's kind of similar to the previous question, but we will be applying for grants to paint a community street mural. The nonprofit that is leading the project has not painted a mural before. Should we include work samples from the lead artist?
Yeah, but you want to make sure that it so the lead artist, we've gotten these before where we get work of the lead artist, but it doesn't really relate to the mural, and we don't have a way of sort of connecting that. So I would include ooh, that's hard. But yeah, if that's what you got, then we'll look at it. It's more about how the project is described by the applicant. We're starting to get close to time here, so I'll try to rush. And always, you can always reach out to us, and we have office hours and stuff, and we're happy to talk to you then too.
This question is about legislative districts. Um, is legislative district taken into account when considering distressed areas? Our organization is at the edge of a county that isn't on the list, but is very rural, which our LD shares with counties that are on the list.
Yeah, no, we can't. We have to stick to what's on the list. We can't sort of fudge there because it's hard to carry that through for everybody, if you know what I mean. There's variances and nuances all the time, and it's really hard for us, especially with the number of applications we get to sort of sift through that. So we stick very closely to the specifics of the priority funding.
Okay. Do I understand correctly that an established organization needs to take on a new project for this grant?
Well, I mean, unless you're a festival and you happen every year, and or you're an annual jazz festival or an annual concert or something like that, and that's all you do, those kinds of organizations would we would consider. a project, even though it's one thing and they do it all, they only do it once a year. If you do it multiple times a year, then it sort of starts to become a program. So it really varies. We'd have to look at the application, or you can just reach out to us directly and discuss it, and we can have a one-on-one or do talk at our open office hours.
We are in King County, but on an island. So which location would we select? They are in a rural, unincorporated King County.
King County's King County. The reason that we don't that we deep prioritize less King County is and other areas is the amount of under other types of funding that's available to those organizations. When you get out into distressed counties and outer reaches of the state, frontier areas, there's no other type of funding for those folks. So we tend to prioritize those. So that's really the metric we use is what type of funding is available to the organization should we not fund them?
Okay. I think we have one or two more questions, so bear with us. This next question says, I bring music lessons to at-risk youth in Whatcom County. I'd like to record an album of kids' songs I wrote for them. Would this type of project qualify?
Yes.
Okay, next question. Is ArtsWA making more of an effort to fund truly rural areas, those outside the I-5 corridor?
Yes.
And the last question, well, second to last question is, will the slide deck be available?
Sure. You want it?
Okay. And this is the last question. I noticed that Whitman was not listed as a distressed area, probably due to Pullman. We are in rural Whitman County. Will that be taken into consideration?
Think there is a second list we use for distressed counties sometimes, and it's put out by the Department of Commerce, and I think Whitman is on that count um, on that list. But Initially, no. It depends on how much money we have and left and how many distressed counties we actually were able to or applied. And then we start looking at that additional distressed county list that's issued by the Department of Commerce. It's rare that we do that, but there's the potential that you could move on to that distressed county list if you're in one of those counties, and it's a very small list of counties that Department of Commerce uses for this type of funding. But there's a possibility. But in general, I would have to say if you're not on the distressed county list, then that's kind of just we have to go by some type of metric. Otherwise, we don't survive audits.
All right. I believe that is the last question. So I think we're good to go.
Thanks everybody for joining us, and office hours I think is it Thursdays, Ashley?
Let me just double check. It is starting next week. It'll be Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Tuesday and Thursdays. Okay. So jump into office hours. We're there, and then we're doing another webinar again on the 25th. Thanks everybody for being here.